Okay, moving right along, we have battery packs or power supplies or whatever it is you call these power banks. This is a definite must, and pretty much I'm pretty sure a lot of people will carry these for their phones and other reasons, just to power their stuff. I use these for multiple use cases, for my phone, for my cameras, for other devices that are USB chargeable. I highly recommend getting yourself a quality power pack, not a cheap one, that is rated appropriately, because some of the cheaper ones will be claim they can have these outrageous capacities, but only really hold a fraction of what they say. And that's just unfortunately the name of the game when it comes to electronics like this. But in front of me here I have a few different resources and styles. This one is kind of meant for just your everyday carrying around your backpack if you needed to have an extra little boost. I think this is only 3,500 milliamp hours, so pretty much only one charge on your phone. But it also has these cool little wires you can charge directly from, along with just some ports down here to add longer cords. And you can use it as a converter for your wires. If you say you had an iPhone cord or an Android cord, you could plug into the wall and then use this as the power converter. So it's kind of a cool little do-it-all kind of power pack, but not very high capacity there. This one I've had for a long time. You can actually see that one of the USBs is messed up. This is a Mophie pack. It's 10,000 milliamp hours, about a couple of charges. This is a grade A product company. Definitely holds the charge a lot better than the Chinese cheaper made alternatives. Well, I shouldn't say Chinese made, but I should say the cheaper knockoff brands, because everything's kind of made in China. It's just quality control there. The Mophie pack's great, but I found that it's pretty heavy for the size and capacity of what you'd expect, but it is the most reliable one I've had. So I used to carry this one out, but I wanted to find bigger capacity options that would do more things. So I purchased a couple of these, and this is when I kind of start talking about the cheaper made ones. This was about $100 when I bought it. These were about, I want to say, $8. These are rated at 30,000 milliamp hours. So they claim, so it says on the back right here. I don't know if you can read that, but it does say 30,000 milliamp hours. Now, I don't have necessarily the time or the patience to sit here and try to charge off of these and deplete them. It's just not worth my time. So from what I have found, they definitely work. The actual power rating, I don't know. The solar aspect of it is cool feature built in. And how fast it charges, that's another thing I couldn't really tell you, because I haven't really spent the time to actually study these things. I have these just because they were so cheap and affordable. I can bring them out, you can throw them in the sun. The downside of cheaper ones is they also maybe get too hot and burn, or you see stuff on cell phones and planes. So be very careful with cheap ones like this. And then lastly, this is another, this is my newest one. This is another affordable option. This was pretty cheap. I think it was like $30. This is supposed to be 26,000 milliamp hours, so a little bit less than these. I do find that it definitely has the weight, and the way you can tell if it's like legit or not is the weight of it. The Mophie's really heavy, and so it has a pretty big, battery cell or a few cells in there taking up the weight. This one's also pretty heavy, but it's supposed to be rated at 2.5 times of this one, about the same weight. So is it realistically at that rating? I'm not so sure. But what I do like about this one is the streamline and the form factor of it. It's pretty much the same size as the phone, so you can stack it. What I find when I'm carrying this is I can actually stack my iPhone on that, and you can see it's pretty much, it fits nice. So you can put it in your pack, you can charge off of it. I usually put this face down like this, and then I can just keep it charging, and I don't have to worry about the screen getting messed up in my pack moving around. So this is my go-to battery pack I use. And since we're talking about solar aspects, I do have a solar panel here. I'm not going to open it up, but this is an Anker 20-watt solar panel, 3 panels, and I will use this to charge up these battery packs when I'm outdoors to inadvertently charge my devices. And something that is super useful, but a lot of times will be overkill. The only really time I found that this was practical for me was when I was in Iceland and I was hiking and for long days filming, and I needed power and the sun was out a long time. I find that when I'm using backpacking in a regular scenario, like in New England or with regular days in the States, that unless I'm at camp and I have this set up, I don't really use this that much. I just rely on my batteries to charge stuff, and those are ample for the trips. However, if I needed a power source, I would definitely recommend bringing this with some kind of battery pack. Now, these are just my options. There are obviously power banks. There's huge power boxes you can get that have a rating to where you can charge laptops and other things that are like 120 volts or a higher voltage. And so these are limited to more 5-volt device, USB chargeable devices, not necessarily outlets. And so you may have to have a whole nother setup for if you're bringing out stuff to charge, for instance, a laptop or some kind of screen or some kind of media device that requires more power. So keep that in mind. Okay, so next up we have cameras, or specifically action cameras. I'm not going to get too much into the production aspects of adventure video. I think we all know the different cameras that are out there, DSLRs, the cinema quality, production style cameras, and then the smaller action ones like these. I have found in my experience that in a perfect world, you want to pack everything to make production, the experience, and the safety and the comfort there. But unless you have a car or a vessel to carry all that stuff, weight is your number one concern and space is your number one concern. With that being said, I have transitioned to doing most of my production on, it's funny, as you can see, Looney Tunes. I was watching the Looney Tunes today, and you can see it in the camera reflection, so it's kind of fun. But don't get distracted by that. But I have found that I transitioned to using stuff like my iPhone and stuff like my GoPro sessions here with different setups to capture everything I need. And it has been perfectly good. It shoots in high quality. The iPhone itself, besides draining the battery, gives you really good footage. And it is something you have already. It's not an extra. And it's something that just comes, it's already there, and you can use it, and you can use your other stuff you bring to keep them charged. For instance, the power packs I just showed you. So in this kit, I basically have a bunch of different ways to mount GoPros on stuff. My sessions here, I have this stick, I have a mount, I have a chest mount, this is a helmet mount here, this is a selfie stick tripod that you can pull out, and I have found that these are perfect for me. I've owned mirrorless Sony cameras, and I'm shooting on a really nice camera now. It's not a 4K camera, but it's a nice Sony camera I've had on for my company for a while, an FS100. And I've had regular GoPros, and I have found just space-wise and what I need them for, that just having this little camera on a stick and be able to just point and shoot, and then if it runs out of juice, I just grab the other one, charge this up in my bag really quickly. It works great. And one thing I didn't really show, which I'll add in on this, is my SD case. I have this little Pelican case here. Very, very useful case. It carries your SDs, and then if you see, it actually embeds different sizes below the original sizes, along with the adapters. So if you have these little tiny micro SDs, they can sit underneath here, and then you put the regular ones. So you can definitely have a lot of storage. And I have found that these two cameras, my iPhone, which doesn't even use it, which is my primary now, this space-wise, and if I wanted to use like a 360 camera, are all I need to capture and create YouTube stuff. Now, I used to carry around a Sony A5, which was nice mirrorless, but it was, again, bulky. I dropped it a few times. I broke the lens on it, and it was more trouble than it was worth. And I find with a lot of people on YouTubers, their DSLRs, when you're making YouTube videos and you have a stabilizer and a DSLR, that makes a lot of sense. But when you're outdoors and you have a pack and everything's limited, you don't really want to lug that around unless you already have a paid production and you have a team and you have people to help you carry the gear. So independent of all that, this is my choice, are just a couple of sessions that shoot really, shoot good footage. I can put them anywhere, strap them to wherever I want. If I lose them, it's not the end of the world. A nice case to carry all my the captured stuff, which I also reminds me, and we're going to talk about drones in a second. You can keep your drone SDs and footage in here too, along with this. So really good purchase here was this little Pelican case. Highly recommended. Save your valuable stuff, and then also just shooting on an iPhone. And one thing that I will mention in terms of what I didn't include in the beginning of this is, which I'll include because I guess it's a part of this, is having a nice stabilizer. And you can go different ways. This one is just meant for my iPhone. This is an Osmos Mobile 2. And I actually will attach a tripod, a mini tripod to the bottom of this. And so I can set it up, and I use my iPhone for that, and I get really nice stabilized footage, which I'll show you guys in other videos moving forward. So with that being said, I probably wouldn't even bring, I would bring this case if I was carrying that, but I probably wouldn't even bring this big case if I'd have the space. I would just bring the cameras and pack them into small pockets and just leave this case at home. It's just big, bulky, and I may not have the space for it. But if I have the space and its weight is not an issue, I will pack this stuff in this case, and then everything will be good to go. So that's pretty much it for action / production / cameras that I would use in this 2020. Okay, so another thing that's very interesting is the conversation around drones or aerial photography using UAVs. Now in front of me here, I have my first packable small drone, the Mavic Pro. And it just came, I got the Fly More, so it came with this case, which I can either, pack that within my bigger pack or take the drone out and use it. Now I'm not going to take this out. You guys don't know what drones look like nowadays, and you don't. This is a DJI Mavic. I have an Air. I have a Pro. I've built a lot of big drones in the past, but it's another one of those things where smaller is better. In this case, you don't want to lug around a big drone unless you're doing surveying. And I find that this is the best bet to get out there. I have 3 batteries, so I can fly three times pretty much without having to need to charge it. One thing I have been working on is being able to charge a drone along with a laptop on my setup. And unfortunately, with what I showed you in the power banks, they don't have the powers you need to be able to charge this stuff up. So you have to figure that out in another way. You have to go find an outlet or some kind of power to recharge these gadgets here. But the DJI Mavic itself is my aerial tool, and I'll bring this out and I can either strap this in my bag, my belt, or put it in the pack depending on what the day is, and access it pretty reasonably in a reasonable time. And this bag isn't that bad. It is a little tight, like a lot of these pockets. Like I don't know what I would put in here. I guess you'd put your SDs, but and also there's like a pocket up here which you can put some stuff. But I find that a lot of the storage for the extra, like the extra accessories, I put in here, and then I just leave the stuff in here, and it works well. I try to separate this stuff and pack it directly in my pack, but then stuff gets mixed around, and for me, organization is key. So a gadget you must have is something like the drone you see in this bag here. Okay, so next on the list is probably a fun one everybody would be interested in, and that is lighting. And there are so many different options for lighting that I couldn't possibly go over all the options in this video or have a collection of everything you could utilize. I have some bigger lanterns that I use for camping, not backpacking, that I would include in this, but because I'm talking about my favorite adventure gadgets and stuff I bring on outside, I'm not going to include those in this portion. So in front of me here I have a few of the tools I use when I go out, and some of them are just backups, like these other headlamps are just some cheap little single feature, just switch on, switch off headlamps that get the job done, and if I need backup I'll bring these. But realistically, what I will usually bring out, I also forgot some traditional lights here, so let's go ahead and keep that there. What I'll traditionally bring out is just a headlamp. This is a storm headlamp. This one has a lot of cool features. It locks so you don't accidentally turn it on. If I hold it down, it will turn on, I think, if I'm doing that right. Yeah, there we go. And then you get all these different modes. You can change the brightness. I can hold it down more, and then it has different LED modes. And it has a pretty good battery life. The only downside I would say to this is that these aren't rechargeable, which may not be a downside to some people. But I would like to be able to recharge these on my USB stuff. Instead of, I'm trying to get away from AA's, right? Or using actual traditional batteries. In some cases, for emergencies, they're good. For instance, something like this uses a AA in it, and you can just replace that along with my kit right here, which I have, and I'll show you this light too. There's a Cree light right here, and then I can carry extra batteries. I have some AA's, and this is my emergency kit that I'll carry, which I can show you at a different time. Well, there are some purposes with lights that have traditional AA batteries there. But realistically, nowadays in the new age, we want things that are USB chargeable so we can keep them powered up and then use like solar to recharge stuff. So the headlamp, you may want to get one that's USB chargeable, but this is a good option. This is a Storm. This is around $50. Pretty diesel, pretty good quality one. And this is my primary headlamp I'll bring with me all the time. These two are backups. These Petzl ones, they're about $20 each. I also have a couple of these light sticks. There's one there. There's actually one right here. I don't know if you can see it hanging. This is just something I'll just have as an emergency. It's not a breakable one. It's actually like a battery-powered one, which is interesting. So you can reuse it and just replace the battery. It's like a watch battery. So I don't know how long that would last, but I don't usually use these. They're not usually on. I just have them for if I need a mark where the site is at night. And so that's pretty much why these come into play. Here I have just a couple of small little hand lights. And so this is my Cree light. It's a really bright light. Pretty bright. And I think it's almost out of batteries, so you can't see it. But this one is a traditional light, a fluorescent light, versus I think this one is actually an LED. So different kind of light technology there, but you know, I'm pretty sure the LED is brighter. But what's cool about these little things is that they're really good for just having as a backup, last minute resource. They're there, they're simple, they get the job done. Traditional little light. I don't really care. I remember back in the day when I was younger, like the 90s, or when I was really young, you'd have these big plastic flashlights, and you just don't want that bulk. And you don't necessarily need a big flashlight if you're just going out and then back up. So these are two little options I use. I usually bring my Cree one, like I said, in the emergency kit as a backup, and then this is just an extra one I have. This is called a Nebo, which is you can use to signal people. Both really good options, around $10. These are some lamps I got. I got a 3-pack of these. They're LED lamps. Not the greatest quality, but they're super convenient in terms of you can just not worry about losing them. I actually gave a couple to a friend. They're bright and they last a pretty long time. They pack down relatively good, but this is pretty bulky. Instead of something like this, I actually moved on to this, which I'm leaving to last because this is my newest light that I got, which has a lot of cool features I'll show you. So here we have, I'm trying to figure out the brand of this. I don't know what the brand, I forget the brand, I think it was like Auger or something. This is a power bank light stick. So it could have been part of the power bank section, but I decided to leave it for the lighting. It's got a bunch of cool light features. I'm still not sure if that's legal to have this. I guess if you're not using it in your car, pretending to be a policeman is okay. But this thing's cool. It's waterproof. It's got nice aluminum tips. It's got magnets right here, and it tells you some of the features that different lights can do. Flashlight, which is on the front right there, which is pretty bright. Warning light, they call that police-looking light, which to me that just looks like a police light. The emergency light, to me, they call this a bug light, which actually seems pretty cool, and the ambiance seems right. And then, of course, you just have the 3 modes for a traditional light right here. And so this is what and lastly, of course, if I take this off, which is probably the most important part, if I unscrew there, you can see we have the USB that you can charge. I believe this is rated at it's like a 5200, so it's not that big. You're only going to probably get 1 solid charge off your phone, maybe 2 if you weren't using it. But again, I'm not using this. This is not being used to charge stuff. This is being used as a light source. And the charging is kind of an emergency resource for your phone if, like, for say your power bank was out and you didn't have a solar charger. So you have that flexibility with this, and this really defines probably like a gadget in terms of lights. All the other ones, these are all very gadgety too, but this is the most gadgety light I have here, which is why I've kind of adopted it. And I like the feel of it, I like the shape, I can pack it down. It's the right size. These things are not the right size in my opinion. They fit awkwardly. You want to put them, I like to keep my lights in the top pocket to grab. These you can't really do that, they're too bulky, so you have to put them in the main pack and they get lost. This thing slides right in the top pack with, like, for instance, you have you see a medical kit back there along with like all that other stuff. It just sits nicely in the top pack, right size. And so I highly recommend this light. This was $30 on eBay, and I'll have to link that. It's called the Power Light. Okay, so on to the last gadget I would recommend bringing out to the outdoors. And again, I try to keep this all in groups, not necessarily specific items, but like categories, because there are obviously different kinds of items in each category you can choose. And so what you're looking at here is pretty much my cook systems I use, which very much align with a lot of the cooking, the blades, and I have a spork, a titanium spork somewhere, which I would usually pack in or put it in my my filtration pack, and that's part of my cook system. But I wanted to go over pack stoves or mini stoves and the different setups I have personally. So I have 2 setups I use, and I'll talk about the differences, and I'll open these up and show you how they nest everything here. So this is my solo setup. This is my primary setup I use the majority of the time. Again, I'm all about the most use case out of the smallest package and the reliability. And although this is a lot less room and water circumference than something like, say, this bigger, this titanium setup here, I find that this is perfect for me, and that it has a mug that's nested in right there. I have enough water to boil. You don't really, I think the biggest thing I would say with, from my experience with backpacking and stuff like this, the biggest mistake I've made and what you try to avoid is eating directly out of a pan where you can't clean it and it gets gross. Usually you eat out of freeze-dried bags that can be thrown away or discarded and kept separate from all the stuff. Something similar to, like, for instance, this backpacker's pantry right here. Stroganoff egg and noodles. So something like this, you boil water in one of these and you pour the water and eat it out of here just to keep this stuff clean. So with that being said, the whole purpose of this is just to get water hot and to boil water and to have water for, like, say, coffee or some kind of drink, and eat out of so you can eat out of the package and keep this stuff clean so that you don't have to worry about bugs, animals, just your stuff getting dirty and gross from food and grease and all this stuff that you have left over from when you eat. And so this is my solo setup, and in here I have a Pocket Rocket mini stove, which I'll show you, and then we'll break open the bigger bad boy over there. This is a nice titanium Snow Peak solo setup. Titanium is very light and very strong. It's not cheap though. If you're gonna pay, I will say if you pay for something like this is around $60-70 for just this little set. But you're setting yourself up for success in life by doing that. So because of a little top that you can come off, and then in here you can see I actually nest to make up for the lack of fuel I can carry inside. I have two that I actually carry, and these last a pretty decent amount of time in the summer. In the winter you probably have to boil longer, but they work good. So I have in there, I have my pan I can boil with. Trying to make some room you can see here. And then I have my pot and my pan, and then I have a cool little foldable pocket rocket that is taking some serious wear and tear and abuse. Once I get this open for you, you can see that it just sits like that. It would sit on top of one of these, and then you can rest the pot and pan on it. It comes with this nice little contraption, and then again this sits inside. So a very versatile, excellent mini stove package that I would recommend if you're starting out as a beginner. There was a windscreen on here, but I since then lost it. It seems to fall off with a lot of people. But the way I would go, easiest method. It is not the best method. There are better. There's stuff called like the jet boil, and there's systems to where the pot and the pan connect that you can hang them in tents, and so this is probably the most straightforward, easy, traditional method of getting a solo stove set up. It's the one I have here. This, I can say, I'm pretty sure this ranges anywhere from $35 to $50. I think you can get one of these. I don't know how much they go for anymore. I know the newer ones are actually the Pocket Rockets. The bigger ones have bigger. This is an original one, so since then it's been approved, but a solid little MSR stove that I highly recommend. And then this is also a titanium set I recommend too. Very cool setup. Let's put that aside and we can move on to the other setup over here. So in front of me here I have my more heavy duty traditional, like if it's wintertime or I'm carrying out more food setup here. And so I may or may not bring this stuff out in this setup, but I will always have at least one of these with me. So this top part, again, this is a stowaway stainless steel pot, so it's a lot heavier. It's a lot cheaper though, and more affordable than the titanium one I just showed you. This is also titanium, and you can definitely feel the weight. I actually just use this as storage. Inside here, I have lots of condiments, but I also have the stove, which I'll show you in a second, which I can carry to different places. And so this has become a really cool resource for me to like put spices, condiments, and stuff that you would traditionally not want to, like, again, mix with all your stuff to keep it clean. And I don't necessarily have to use this, but if I need to use it, I can cook in it. I can like make pasta in it. I can eat out of it as a bowl, and I can stow it away and lock it up so I know nothing's going to get into it. And so if I were to, you know, if I had to, I'd probably use this over the other ones, which I don't really want to get dirty and junky. But that's a stowaway, and then there's a bunch of condiments in there that you can use in spices. So if you're fishing, or you know, you have meat with you, you can obviously season it before you cook it up on the stove or whatever. So this was like 20-something bucks. Heavy, but cool item. My other stove, which I will talk about, is my what is it called? It is called the Covia Spider Stove, I think it is. Very traditional. If I'm just, you know, what's interesting, and I find this, is that if you look at the shape, and I know it's not really in focus there, I'm going to try to get it in focus for you, but the shape of this one is shaped outwards, and then this one has a the opposite shape, and then you can see the holes are on the top in this one, and then this one, they're on the side, and the top has a few holes too. This one has a wider base, so you can put bigger pans on it. And I will show you a pan I use in the winter in a second that I use. It also has a wire, an inversion wire, so you can invert the fuel. So in the winter time, that when you have these mixed fuels, you can make them sit like this so that it burns from a liquid, not a gas. In colder temperatures, the gas will have trouble leaving this, so if you invert it, it actually pours the liquid aspect into this. And then it has this little coil here. I'm not going to get too much into it, but this little coil will help create a gas out of the liquid so that it can burn appropriately. One of the pans I use with this in the wintertime is this big, giant, foldable GSI Outdoors pan. Really nice. In the wintertime, I'll pack this, folds in, and unfortunately it doesn't nest in the stuff, but in terms of having the circumference you need to cook on something, you want to be able to, like a big pan like that, you have to have something that sits out. You wouldn't really want to put that big pan on this. It just would have, you could flop over, you'd spill your food. This is really just to get water boiled, and you could absolutely cook on these. These are pretty much the same kind of stoves, but I think the actual arms on this make this a little bit more stable for the size and how it packs down. What's interesting about this, it packs down pretty much similar, very similar to the Pocket Rocket. It folds up like that, and you can coil that, and then that can sit, you know, directly in the pan, or I had it in the nested in there. So it's a little bit different setup than the Pocket Rocket, but another stove I use. In here, it's pretty much just a bigger version of the Solo version I showed you. This is the same company as Snow Peak Titanium. I will say that this actually, I don't really like this one as much because I've had problems with a design flaw. First off, I'll just show you that. This is a used and abused titanium pot. Nothing special. You know, you can hit bears, you can bang. make noises. But I've used this a bunch of times. It's actually deformed. You can see I've fallen on it. But the design flaw with this is this frying pan, and it's a terrible, terrible design. And the reason why it's terrible is the way they set up the hinges here. A design that's not silly, or a good design, is one that's like this. Meaning when I unfold this, the wires are stopping the handle from flopping, right? And so that's how it should be designed. And then it folds up and in like that. That's correct. What's not correct, and I don't know what they were thinking at Snow Peak when they did this, was this design. They have these clips in here, and it folds down like that, so you think it would be good. But what happens is when you hold this, if you're not squeezing this together tightly, like squeezing this like tweezers, what happens is that this flops open a lot, and then you lose everything in your frying pan. And you'll be walking along, about to eat, and it'll just flop over, and you'll lose it. And it's happened to me a bunch of times, and it pretty much makes this thing not very useful, the handle at least. I have cooked in this and eaten out of this, but again, it comes down to the aspects of having to clean it out, and it's just better to try not to cook out of stuff unless you have some kind of way to clean it. Like some biodegradable soap, you can scrub it. But yeah, this handle is stupid. So I usually will only use this as a cover, and then I will use it as a plate, but I will never hold it with the handle anymore. And that's pretty much the reason why I don't like this one as much. The size form factor is bigger, but this one is a lot better for the use case.